YouTube, Dawson Ryder here. Welcome to my review for Mighty Morphin issue 18. This was an overall decent issue. It was kind of a filler issue, mainly because we ended off on, I wouldn't say a cliffhanger, but kind of something of note last week with the arrival of some form of the Machine Empire. And it just felt a little awkward to me that we ended off on that, and then we don't address it till the very end. And we end off on a very similar note, except they've landed, and it just feels like you're ending on the same note, and it feels like we're kind of treading water, kind of just standing in place. Don't get me wrong though, I really do appreciate this issue for having these really nice little character moments and smaller moments, because in a lot of ways that's what makes the comic for me, is the more in-depth character stuff and the small stuff rather than the superficial stuff. But just structurally it felt a little weird because, again, I felt like we ended off on a big reveal and I was waiting for the follow-up for that, and then we just end on the same note. Setting that aside, there was all kinds of nice little moments with this. We start off with some interesting moments between Zordon, Grace, and Matt, because Matt's helping them and Zordon's like, thanks, and he's like, don't worry about it, I have no problem helping you, but also I still hate you. Bye. And basically, Grace reminds him, like, oh hey, you know, remember like 5 minutes ago before this war you were threatening to take the coin by force. And that leads to a really nice scene between Grace and Zordon where he basically apologizes for how he handled everything about the relationship, which is really nice and a long time coming. And she says something to the effect of, like, well, of course now, you know, after all this happens and we're helping you and your back's to the wall, you're going to apologize, but it'll be interesting to see how you act later. And I think that'll sort of set the precedent for how I'd like to see it go, because I really like what this whole arc has done for Zordon. I mean, the comic has given us a much more fleshed out version of Zordon, but they've also given us a much more fleshed out version of his worst qualities. But the Altarian War arc, I think, really set him up for a kind of redemption from his sort of dogmatic, narrow ways, and I really like that. But I also don't necessarily want to see Grace and Zordon always work together, because I really like having these two different teams about them, but it was, regardless, a really nice scene. And there's like a cool shot, too, of like the Zords are being used to create this force field around the command center rubble when Matt calls Rocky about it, and we get to see some nice scenes with Rocky and his family. Again, I appreciate that we're getting some nice character stuff with Rocky. I hope that extends to Adam and Aisha, because they've been the most shortchanged, as I've mentioned, ad nauseum. But there's some really nice little family scenes with them, and a random Dragon Ball Z fusion dance reference for some reason. Before the mom leaves, he treats them to like meeting Matt, because he's the public Green Ranger, and he takes them on like a field trip to Grace's base, and there's some kind of just nice and fun scenes there before the Machine Empire arrives at the end. And then on the other side of things, it's kind of the B plot of what's going on with the Mighty Morphin team, is they are on that water planet to find that command center that they can use. And they wind up finding it, but they get attacked by the native people who think that they're from the Empire. And for a split second, I was like, dude, this isn't Star Wars. For a split second, I was worried. I thought, like, ugh, did they mistake him for Draken again? Is this going to be about something Draken's up to? Are we bringing Draken in already? But they actually just mistook him for Eltarians. And long story short, we find out that they can't use the base because they're using it as like an egg storage place, but they allow them to briefly use it to track down another command center, and then they can never come back again. And so they use the command center to track down another one, and our next destination is going to be the Lion Galaxy, which, if you recall, originated from Ninja Steel, which was where I think Mick is from and where the lion armor is from. So I'm actually kind of interested to see where that goes, mythology-wise. I think that's a cool next destination for us to head to. I think the strongest point about that story, though, was this nice little scene with Billy and Aisha, where Aisha is kind of asking for tips on how to be a ranger, and Billy's like, I don't really have any, and Aisha says, you don't seem to care so much about being a ranger, do you? He's like, no, I love how we help people and the camaraderie, but I think there's so much more fascinating stuff about all of this that has nothing to do with ranger powers. And I thought that was a nice little character building scene based off what we know of the show version of Billy, because while these are alternate versions of the characters, they are variants of the characters we know. And something I really enjoy about the comics that they especially used to do more so in the early days, kind of enhanced where we knew the characters were going. Like with Trini and Zach, they kind of set them up for where they would be going after the peace conference, and then in the MMPR Pink comic, they sort of showed like that they were happy where they ended up, and they kind of enhanced where we already knew the characters were going. And we know that in the original timeline, Billy would lose his powers and step down from becoming a ranger, and this sort of sets up a version of that, and I'm really interested to see where we go from where we know the characters were supposed to end up to where they will be now in the post-Shattered Grid world. So I thought that was a really interesting and strong scene. Overall, this was still a solid issue. I would give it a 3 out of 5. It was very enjoyable. I appreciated the smaller character moments. I just think structurally it was a little bit disappointing to sort of end off both this issue and last issue on a similar note, but I'm looking forward to seeing where this goes, both in terms of the character stuff and the bigger Machine Empire stuff. But what did you guys think of this issue? Let me know in the comments as always. Until next time, like, comment, subscribe, and climb the steps and ring that bell. See notifications for my videos. Dawson Ryder, signing out.